The biggest problem with George Soros' conspiracy theories isn't that they're wrong. Yes, he gets accused of overthrowing governments, having his own personal foreign policy, and being supreme lizard king of Atlantis. But these conspiracy theories are all terrible because they understate his power. To understand why, we're gonna have to start from the 1970s. Do you know what this whole ordeal was? A bunch of countries decided to try and resurrect the 19th century and instituted a half-baked version of the gold standard along with fixed exchange rates. What this basically means is that the exchange rate between the USD and the pound was always fixed at the same number. It couldn't fluctuate like it does today based on currency demands. And likewise, the dollar was actually pegged to gold. But then, Nixon in 1971 was like, no, and gutted the exchange rate between the dollar and gold. To this, the Europeans replied, what the fuck? So Europe decided to go its own way and establish a new monetary system with blackjack and hookers and, okay, I'm just kidding. They still relied on US support and just fixed exchange rates again. This was called the European Exchange Rate Mechanism. European countries basically agreed to a range within which their exchange rates could change, plus or minus 2.5%, and vowed to have their central banks intervene if that didn't work out. Britain first opposed the endeavor because of a certain metal person, but she eventually gave in and the UK joined the ERM with a whopping exchange rate of 2.95 German marks for £1, with a lower bound of 2.77 marks. As it turned out, this exchange rate was way too high. Here's the thing. Imagine if you're trying to increase the price of something, let's say blackberries. For some reason, your goal is to have blackberries cost $1,000. So every time someone tries to sell one for $400, you scream no and buy it for $1,000. Eventually, you make blackberries scarce enough that $1,000 becomes a fair price. Or you go broke. Can you guess what happened to the Bank of England? Okay, let's zoom out just a little bit. The Bank of England equivalent of buying blackberries for $1,000 a pop was 1. Raising interest rates, and 2. Buying pounds with USD, German marks, and other currencies. In terms of domestic effects, 2 is mostly fine, but the issue is that you eventually start running out of other people's currencies because, well, you can't print other countries' currencies. I hope you knew this. On the other hand, 1 is a sure-proof way of making your currency stronger if need be. You raise interest rates, which means that people want to buy your currency so they can save in that currency. It also means that there's less lending, so less pounds are created and they become more scarce. Only problem is that you screw over your economy. People who want to take out loans get pissed at you. Companies that want to take out loans get pissed at you. Your uncle who is planning to buy a house gets pissed at you. People lose their jobs. It's an all-around shit show. Which is why you generally only start raising interest rates if inflation is a big problem, like in the 1970s or 2022. But when you decide to be Mr. British twat and decide that your currency has to be worth at least 2.77 if whatever those damn Germans are putting out, you screw yourself and your economy over. But fine, doesn't have to be that bad. After all, you're only going to have to start raising interest rates if people start selling the pound. People just stay convinced that your currency is valuable, everything will stay fine. And wait, George Soros, what are you doing? No, don't! Okay, so Soros in August 1992 basically pressed a big red button that said, short the pound. This means he started borrowing a lot of money in the pound and buying other currencies with it. His bet was that the Bank of England would be too scared of raising rates enough to keep their currency afloat. To be specific, Soros sold the equivalent of 10 billion pounds. The Bank of England responded by A, buying back a bunch of pounds, and B, raising rates even though the UK was in a recession. And disclaimer, raising rates during a recession is usually not a good idea. Except they also sort of didn't. Here's a graph of interest rates in the UK at the time. Do you see the rate hike in 1992? No, of course you don't, because the Bank of England announced a rate hike at 11 AM, but at 7:30 PM they gave in. The UK left the ERM and allowed the pound to float. Soros became demonized as the man who took down Britannia, and the UK? Well, they actually did pretty damn well. Here's the thing. As you recall, the pound was initially overvalued at 2.95 marks. But leaving the ERM, the UK became able to stop worrying about the pound and just cut interest rates. And for sure, when rates went down, the value of the pound plummeted to 2.42 marks by year end, but the economy started growing. Lower interest rates allowed people and firms to borrow and invest in capital, and the UK soon came out of its recession. In fact, by the turn of the century, the pound bounced back to be worth more than 3 marks again. If not for Soros, the UK would have been forced to keep interest rates high to keep the pound afloat. The recovery would have been much slower and the country would suffer immensely. Just ask the US during the Great Depression. And this one man, often accused of being a lizard king, saved the country just because he wanted to make a quick buck. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, or better yet, to our Patreon. Link down in the description below.